Why do you think so many Black attorneys end up starting solo practices or their own office?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it has to do with a culture fit at the law firm. Um, and that's such a loaded word, right? This culture fit. But law firms, especially the big law firms, are really conformist. There isn't a whole lot of room to decide how you want to show up presentation wise, to decide when you want to show up hours wise. It's really hard work, and you basically, I mean, they own you, right? Because you have this billable hour, you're under salary, but they still own you. And the competition within the firm and people's some can be unwillingness to share is tough. And it is hard. I think you have two things. You have that culture fit of what these traditional law firms are like, regardless of race and class and all of that stuff. And then you have this work that is really, really hard that nobody really tells you how to do, but you've graduated now and you're expected to know how to do it. And then you have your own pressure of wanting to be really successful and doing well. And then also law firms don't really give you, I remember telling my mom, I was like, I don't get any positive feedback, right? And she was the principal and she was like, oh, neither do I. But I'm like, yeah, you do, because the parents tell you good job, the kids come and hug you, your teachers tell you that they appreciate you. But in the law firm, the only feedback that we got was if you messed something up. And if you did something good, it's like, that's what you're supposed to do, right? So
Right.
I think a large part of it is separating, or maybe it's hard to separate what is the learning curve because you're new in this profession and it requires more or different things than you've ever had to give before. And the other part is like fitting in and feeling at home in this law firm and in this company culture. One thing I noticed also is that my friends that I had met at Hastings who were Black, who hadn't gone to school with a lot of white people, and just to like put it blunt about that, when things got challenging, they almost thought it was more about the racial fit than just the work being challenging. Right. And I'd gone to Santa Clara. It was 2% Black people at the time that were enrolled there. Grew up in the suburbs of Portland. You can imagine how non-diverse that is. So I was used to being in schools and educational settings that were, one, really challenging, but also where I was the only one that was there. So it wasn't hard for me to be in that position and to be the only one there at the law firm because that's how I grew up, right? But I think when that's new and you're stepping into that and you've never experienced something like that, on top of learning this new profession, it's really hard. It's hard.
Right. At the firm you were at, were you the only Black lawyer?
I was the only Black woman. There was an older Black gentleman who was there, and I don't remember if he was there the whole time that I was there or not, but I think it was. And then there was a third man at a different office in Fairfield or something like that.
Okay.
And
So
actually, I'm sorry. I think the Black gentleman who I was talking about, I think he was there when I was there for the summer, but he wasn't there. I don't believe he was there when I came back. Um, to start as an associate.
yeah. See, I've like never worked at a firm, so I don't really know what firm life is. And I definitely haven't worked on the defense side. I know
Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah, I mean it's not very warm and inviting. I mean it's like law school extended, right? Like you might find your people, but everyone's working so hard, and just by the nature of the law itself, it's antagonistic. So nobody really has time because if they're teaching you, then they're losing out on their billing also, right? And then, I think a lot of attorneys, we forget after a few years what it's like to be brand new, and teaching is an art form, right? So
Right.
there are just a number of social factors, I think, beyond the work being really challenging that make it a difficult adjustment.
So once you started your own office, how did you like that versus working in a firm?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I missed was all of the support, right? And being able to ask people when I was unsure how to do something. But fortunately, I had created a really strong community of other attorneys that I could ask, like you included, Taiga, Aliu, the man I'd worked with, and a couple other people who, if I had a particular question, I could ask. But the firm has lots of resources, right? They have Westlaw that you can get on that you're not personally paying the bills for. They have a set of books. Like I see the books that you have next to you, the books are all available.
Another guide.
Yeah, for sure. They have cases. You can always go back to old cases and look and see how the attorney previously wrote this particular document. So even though the teaching is not necessarily top notch at a law firm, the resources are there. And so you can figure it out. You have access to all of these things. When you start out on your own, unless you're generating money right away, you got to figure out, let me go to the library and look this up. Let me see, who has a sample that I can use, but also without trying to be like a leech, right? Or a mooch, mooching off of somebody and their hard work as well. That's probably
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest difference. And then also just trusting your instincts, or I wouldn't even say instincts, trusting that you know how to research something well enough and that you can do it and it's going to be okay. Whereas before, as an associate, a partner always reviewed everything that went out, before I sent it. I didn't send anything out, right? It was partner's name who reviewed it and then sent it out under their letterhead.
What type of cases were you taking?
I took 2 family law cases. I tell my students this all the time. I took 2 family law cases and decided I was done. The first one was great because it was a default judgment, so there was no contest, right? So that was awesome. The second one was this guy who was getting divorced, and like every time we'd get ready to sign the marital settlement agreement, he would come in and he would start crying, like, "No, I wanted to get a job, I wanted to do this," and I'm like, "We've already agreed." So by the third time that he had come in and pump faked on the signature, I was like, you know what, this is too emotional for me. I don't have the constitution to deal with this with you. So no more family law, but I really settled on employment side, plaintiff side employment. So I was representing folks who had been discriminated against, they'd lost their jobs, or they'd been demoted based on a protected category of age, race, religion, ethnicity, or if they had complained about some kind of protected activity.